Steve Bannon spoke at the California GOP convention last night and bluntly questioned President Bush's intelligence and whether he even understood his own speech.
President Bush, to me, embarrassed himself. Speechwriter wrote a highfalutin speech. It's clear he didn't understand anything he was talking about. He equates the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, globalization. He has no earthly idea whether he's coming or going. Just like it was when he was President of the United States. I want to apologize up front to any of the Bush folks outside in this audience, okay? Because there has not been a more destructive presidency than George Bush's.
All right, let's discuss this. And joining us now is A. Scott Bolden. He's former chairman of the Washington, D.C. Democratic Party, and Paris Denard, CNN political commentator and former Bush White House director of Black Outreach. Thank you both for joining me this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Paris, let me start with you. Scathing words coming from Steve Bannon there. And I'm wondering, he said that there has not been a more destructive presidency than George Bush's, and even questioning Bush's intelligence. What's your reaction to that?
You know what, I disagree with Steve Bannon's characterization of President George W. Bush, who I had the honor and privilege of working for 4 years in the White House. I do want to say that there are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who disagree with how President Bush led on certain issues. There are many in our own party, the Republican Party, who are more on the conservative side, who disagree with things that President Bush did as it relates to bailouts and his focus on some of the interventions that we got in as it relates to the global war on terror. But that does not mean that we have to attack them negatively. Like President Reagan said, we are all Republicans and we should not attack each other. And so I don't agree that in his characterization of the president, but I do understand that people within our own party, it's an open tent, big party with a lot of diverse opinions, have diverse opinions as it relates to the political spectrum of conservative to more moderate to more liberal Republicans and the politics of it. So that happens, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, A. Scott, let me bring you into this conversation. We haven't heard a whole lot from Presidents Obama and Bush since they left office. Why now? Why do you think they're speaking out now?
Well, I think you haven't heard from them because they've tried to respect, in the tradition of past presidents, this current presidency. But these are abnormal times. These are uncommon times. The political divisiveness, the divisions being caused by race politics, and the negative narrative being driven by the White House and this president. I'll be honest with you. I think they feel compelled beyond belief in regard to stepping up and reminding us of what presidential values are, what national and American values really are, because we hear very little about that coming from the Trump supporters and from the Trump White House.
Well, if they feel so strongly about that, why didn't they name the president by name? Why is it always this thinly veiled kind of speak? Why not say President Trump?
I don't think it's thinly veiled at all, and I'm not their speechwriter, but I will say this. Why name him and why get into a swearing match with him in regard to what his response would be, or get into personal attacks when the real issue isn't Donald Trump? It's about our American and political values and where we are as a country. Their politics are about inclusiveness, tolerance, justice, and equality, and Donald Trump's politics are about divisiveness and everything but that. So the message was really clear, and, you know, we needed to hear that, I think, as a country, and need to hear more from them, and I expect it, because the Republicans are so divided within their home, despite the fact they control all three houses.
All right, Paris, let me ask you this. Do you think that with Bush and Obama speaking out, what kind of impact do you think it's going to have on this administration, on the president? Do you think it will embolden him, or do you think he'll sort of take heed?
I think the president of the United States is focused on doing the best he can for the American people through his campaign slogan, which is now the mantra, "Make America Great Again for Everyone." When he looks at tax reform, when he looks at trying to cut the corporate tax rate, when he's trying to do things like help middle-class Americans increase their child income credit, credit. These are positive things for the American people. $4,000 to $9,000 in their pocket, allowing you to keep more of your own money. That's what he's focused on. He's focused on infrastructure spending. He's focused on eradicating ISIS. He is not focused on
coming from the
focused
president.
on fighting everybody in the White House and in the GOP, quite frankly.
He's not focused on fighting everyone in the White House.
Well, that's what he does publicly and
privately. Who is he fighting in the White House? He's not fighting with them. He is fighting for the American people. And he's not focused
the GOP
on
leadership, and he needs them to get something done. And by the way, if Donald Trump stands for all of that, then why hasn't he accomplished any of it? He couldn't accomplish health care reform.
Democrat obstruction.
He's not going to get
Tell
tax
your
reform
party, Scott.
because he
Tell your
won't
party
come to the
to
table
do it.
with Democrats
Hey, Scott, hold on a
to
second.
solve these issues.
Let's
He
have
simply
Paris just
won't do it.
respond,
He's
and then I'll let
incapable
you
of doing
respond
it.
to that. So hold on, Scott. Paris, please.
Scott knows that there's called separation of powers, and the president sets the agenda. The Congress has to act. And so a lot of the things that have been going on in the Congress is due to, in great part because Democrats refuse to come to the table and do the right thing.
Democrats aren't invited to the table. That's
when
nonsense.
It comes to
That's a nonsensical response up here.
When it comes to voting,
it's us versus them.
Scott.
It's Republicans. We've got the majority of them, and that's how we're going to get it done. And they're failing America because of that divisiveness.
You're right. The Democrats are failing because they don't want to do something as simple as tax reform, and that's what we're doing.
Hold on, both of you. Let's just wait a minute. Let's try and take it one at a time because it's the only way you're going to be heard. So, Scott, I understand your criticism, and really I have the same question to Paris, which is, if the president feels so strongly in all of those issues that you have brought up, he's misdirecting everyone with this tweet battle that he is having, whether it's over Gold Star families or whether it's over other feuds that he's having with former presidents.
Exactly.
The president isn't having a feud with anybody. He reacts to what people say to him. And on the notion that these presidents are excluding President Trump, no one had that criticism when President Bush and President Clinton in 2010 created the Haiti Relief Fund and asked why they excluded President Obama. Nobody asked the question when Presidents George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and President Clinton and the Johnson Library created the Presidential Leadership Scholarship Program and excluded President Obama. So now all of a sudden when the five presidents get together, the former presidents get together and do what they should do as former presidents, now all of a sudden we are creating this narrative that they're excluding President Trump. You didn't say that. We didn't say that. We didn't say that before.
Scott, you got 15 seconds real quick to sort of
I think
summarize.
what it highlights here, whether he was invited or not, is that he's not a lover. He's a fighter. He's not a consoler. He's an instigator. And the manifest evidence of that, we get it every day, whether it's tweets or whether it's his statements from the White House or whether it's picking fights with Gold Star families or congresspersons who are heroes in their communities who want to move this country forward.
Okay, we've got to leave it there. Paris Denard, thank you very much. A. Scott Bolden, as always, thank you both for joining us this morning.
I'm glad the president is fighting for all of us. Thank you.
I wish.